Many, many years ago, Ben got a book, Landmarks of History and the Challenge he undertook. Visit all the sites, tick off every one. Ben would not be satisfied till each of them was done. From England to Scotland, Ireland to Wales, you can count on Benjamin to know the facts and tales. So come and ride along on Benjamin's Britain, get to know the places in the spaces around you. And also there's Nicky Pavitt.
Well, now we know. We are today talking about the Churchill War Rooms.
Woohoo!
The underground complex that housed the British government during the Second World War.
Spoiler alert.
Had you ever been to the Churchill War Rooms before we visited?
I had not. And in fact, that's how I believe you lured me into this project in the first place by suggesting, Nicky, have you ever been to the Churchill War Rooms? And I said no. And I have an interest in Churchill. I suppose I did a number of essays about Churchill at university. We did a presentation about Churchill in one of our modules.
He's quite hard to avoid when you're studying a history degree, isn't he? He's kind of everywhere.
Yeah, so I did some electoral politics stuff, boring. And then we did a presentation about eugenics, and which included Churchill's views. So I'm well aware of the controversial views of Churchill.
Yeah. Highly divisive figure, Winston Churchill.
Exactly. Good and bad, I'd say, as I'm sure most people are.
Indeed. No historical figure is going to come out really smelling of roses when you dive into their views. I'd never been nor heard of the Churchill War Rooms.
Heard of?
You know, maybe I'd seen them in TV and film. Maybe. Mm-hmm. I certainly didn't know they were a place you could visit. And for those who know London, you can find them basically in between Downing Street and the Houses of Parliament. Underground. It's a museum today, but that's where the war rooms were located.
And it's a Imperial War Museum. It's connected. It's one of their 5 sites.
I remember it being a pretty impressive landmark.
It was good. I think it was probably expensive to go in. Those things always are a bit pricey, and that's probably the reason why I hadn't been in the first place, to be honest. I think it was summer. I knew
it was a landmark to be ticked off. You had no idea.
No idea. Totally unknown. The 2 things I remember the most from the Churchill War Rooms are, one, the Churchill Museum part, which was like an interactive, I imagine quite new exhibition space, and that massive digital desk table in the middle, which you could touch and you could select years, not just months, specific days of Churchill's life, which you could click on, and it tells you what he did and who he met. Sometimes what he had for dinner, which was usually something extravagant,
in the bathtub.
Champagne. Yeah, exactly.
I've never seen anything in a museum like it, where you can zoom in onto a historical figure's day and hour and find out what they were up to. It was insane. Very impressive. You know,
I can't remember exactly the amount of years it covered, but obviously during the war years, that's quite intense. You know, there's an awful lot going on. You don't get weekends if you're the Prime Minister during World War II, that's for sure.
We should probably discuss what actually went on in the Cabinet War Rooms. What went on there, Nicky? What happened at this place?
Well, I guess I never actually said what the second thing that I remember from it was, but the second thing I was going to say is just walking around all the individual rooms, the corridors that connect to all these, you know, various rooms. And essentially it was almost, I guess, like a mini Parliament Whitehall underground. So I know they had a BBC broadcasting room for radio. They had bedrooms. They had Churchill's bedroom, I believe, although...
He had a bedroom down there, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he spent that much time there. I don't think he did. I can't imagine him being that scared.
He lived in Downing Street, didn't he? So I suppose it wasn't a long commute for him.
I can't imagine him going, oh God, I'm really scared of these bombs. It doesn't seem very Churchill to me.
Well, they built it underground, didn't they? Because they thought London was going to get bombed in the war. And obviously they were absolutely correct. Mm-hmm. So built it underground so they could carry on with government operations, even in the face of German bombing, which was, a really smart decision.
Yep, entirely true. His wife had a room there.
Really?
Yeah, but they weren't the same room. They
had separate rooms.
Yeah. And I can't remember it in full detail, but I think they had like a big map room, big tables for basically a cabinet meeting.
Yeah, I think the map room is probably the most iconic part of the Cabinet War Rooms. When I think of our day there, I think of the map room, and you've seen it in movies and you've seen it in TV. It's the actual room where the maps were plastered over the walls and over tables. And you can imagine men on telephones getting updates about where their different armies were. Pushing. Yeah, that's it. With the little dots and strings over the map, plotting invasions of countries. Like that is the Churchill War Rooms. That's what's going on down there.
Real life Risk.
They were playing Risk in real life. They actually were.
Yeah. It's hard enough as it is, but when you're throwing in like actual lives and
very much real life Risk. And it wasn't just a boys' club, was it? There were men and women, all loads crammed down in there. All the secretaries.
Yeah.
I think there must have been hundreds of different bodies down there, all busy at work. It featured really heavily in the film about Churchill, which came out with Gary Oldman.
Oh, so many films, so many TV shows.
So many Churchill films. But I think that Gary Oldman Churchill film, it came out a few years ago. I think most of the action took place in the war rooms. And in that film, Churchill was portrayed as being on the loo, on the phone to the President of America, which... in doing a bit of homework for this podcast, I read was a real thing. There was
brilliant.
One phone down there which had a direct line to the White House, and it had to be scrambled through bits of machinery spread across London, and it was in the same room as the toilet. So Churchill would have been on the loo chatting to Franklin Roosevelt, pleading with him to get involved with the war.
Eventually worked.
It's a good film.
The Americans get involved at some point, don't they? It's all good, really.
They do, and maybe they use the Cabinet War Rooms. Who knows?
Maybe.
I also learned, and this was a fact from Clive Aslet himself, that the Germans never found out about the war rooms. And we know that because it never featured in any official German documents. And it would have been a target, right? The theory is that the Germans never found out about its existence. And here in the heart of London, underground was basically the beating heart of, the Britain's war effort. It closed, unsurprisingly, at the end of the war. And that was it. The war rooms were open for the period of the Second World War, and then they were never used by a future government. They were just forgotten about, I think, for decades and decades until they were opened up as a museum 20 years ago or something.
I'm relieved. Because if there was a need for it, that would have not been a good reason, would it?
That's true. Although I must say, if I was a prime minister, I'd kind of want my own little secret lair. I think there's something exciting about that.
How do you know there isn't one?
Damn, you're right. Right. Theresa May definitely had a bunker somewhere.
Yeah, Boris is for sure in a bunker.
Yeah,
100%. I bet he sits there and he does pretty much as Churchill did. He just sits there on the toilet, calling up Trump, swigging on his champagne. He's having a great time. I
think Boris desperately wants to be like Churchill. He desperately wants to be the Churchill of the 21st century.
I think you're right, yeah. They've had a similar trajectory as well.
Interesting, yeah. Boris Johnson actually wrote a very entertaining book about Churchill.
That's true.
Read it. I think Churchill is very much his hero, and I think Boris would love the comparison. Really,
I think you're probably right there. He lived at 90 years old as well. I mean,
was he 90 when he died?
Imagine that, getting so fat on so much food and booze and just smoking cigars until the cows come home and living to 90. That is, there must be something was keeping him going, wasn't it? British spirit or something.
Bulldog spirit. Yeah. He had a famously unhealthy lifestyle, didn't he? Mm-hmm. And used to drink. Wasn't he known for just getting drunk at work and, taking meetings from his bed because he was so lazy.
Hey, it worked, didn't it?
Got the job done, I suppose. Do you have a favourite TV or film portrayal of the big man himself, of Winston Churchill?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, Gary Oldman won the Oscar, but I do like John Lithgow in The Crown.
He's so good as well. He's so good.
He looks the most like him without having to wear prosthetics, I think. And I thought he was really good.
There must be dozens of Churchills in films.
There's loads.
Of course, he was the man who was voted the greatest Briton of all time.
Yeah, that's true. Which is so interesting. It's so interesting. I wonder why. But I don't know whether because we've studied him, whether that makes him more of a balanced person in our minds, because we can see the good and the bad. He's definitely got problematic opinions, but a great wartime leader. It's interesting that the British people don't, see him as the greatest, which is quite fascinating.
You mean today? Today, I don't think he'd win the top of that vote.
Yeah, it wasn't even that long ago, though, I feel.
No,
I feel like it was 10 years ago, maybe.
I think there's definitely a Churchill myth. And I think for a lot of Brits, he represents the good old days.
Yeah.
Good, like a fighting spirit. And I think he has a very nostalgic place in Britain's memories. And you can understand why.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't really fault him for being a fantastic wartime leader, but it's what comes before and after that that's kind of an issue. One of the things I wrote about in uni was why he lost the election after the war. It was basically because he was like, Japan, we have to defeat Japan. And everyone else was like, we're tired. We just want a new house. We don't want to live in this, broken street anymore. We just want to be able to go to the doctors and get someone to look after us. And he wasn't interested. He was just like, no, we have to beat Japan.
I remember I think I learned it at uni that he was voted out in 1945, which came as just such a shock to me.
I know. I was surprised when I first realised that. I mean, obviously he then came back 6 years later or something. Was it 6? And
that's when we saw him in The Crown.
Yes, correct.
With a young Queen Liz.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Churchill was Queen Elizabeth's first Prime Minister, of course.
Yeah.
The first of about 12 or 13 she's had since.
Oh, God.
Which is pretty excellent.
But, I mean, what a one to start on, though. It must be quite intimidating.
Yeah. And I think that was portrayed quite well in The Crown, that the power dynamic was very much with Churchill. He was the elder statesman and a bit of a legend by that point.
Yeah, exactly.
The Queen was a young woman.
Yeah.
Suddenly in a very significant position of influence. Mm-hmm. I'm quite pleased you chose the Churchill War Rooms for us to discuss, because today, it's the 16th of September, and I think yesterday was the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Britain. Or maybe it must be going on right now. And of course, our response to the British side of the Battle of Britain would have been planned out from the Churchill War Rooms.
It all comes full circle.
It feels right to be discussing a World War II related landmark today.
Which is a coincidence, but a great coincidence.
We're going to start rating these landmarks, Nicky, to see which ones come out as the best. And I've got a couple of categories I'd like you to rate the Churchill War Rooms against.
Excellent.
Out of 10, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. So firstly, historical significance. The historical significance of the Churchill War Rooms. How highly would you rate that?
That's got to be quite high, I would say.
Really important.
It kind of epitomizes the Second World War and, Churchill's leadership. So I would say historical significance, probably a 9.
Oh, okay, it's a strong start for the Churchill War Rooms.
It's going to be hard to get 10.
In fact, the Churchill War Rooms doesn't get a 10. I'm not sure what does. I would agree with that 9. Okay. Secondly, how would you rate the fun factor of visiting this landmark?
You know what? It's surprisingly fun. I think if you were a teenager on a school trip, you'd actually kind of enjoy it. because it was quite interactive when we went, and I liked being able to walk around the ruins and see what it was like. I would go for a solid 6.
Okay, 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
I think that, that's about right. It's good fun exploring all the tunnels down there, pretending like you're the one in the map room.
Yeah, exactly. Making the beep, 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 beep noises that I did earlier.
That is fun.
So fun.
And now we are good millennials. So finally, I'd like you to rate the Churchill War Rooms on its Insta-worthiness, please.
I think it's going to be low, if I'm honest, because 2 reasons. I'm pretty sure we weren't allowed to take photos inside.
I hate it when that's the case, but yes, okay, that might be true.
So kind of impacts the Insta-worthiness. So we took our photo outside with just a sign that says Churchill War Rooms, and it's quite boring. There isn't really anything external to take a picture of for obvious reasons. It was meant to be a secret. So I'm going to say a 1.
You know what? I think that is fair. I'm looking it up now. I think we took a rubbish photo outside. Yeah, we just stood by the entrance sign, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we were in the queue for it, actually.
No.
So it's not even a good memory.
I like to think our Instagram game has definitely improved over the years.
Yeah.
Today that photo would definitely be more creative. Maybe it would have involved a cigar and a Churchill bowler hat.
Yeah. We could have raided the gift shop for interesting things to wear.
So a 9 or 6. So Nicky, you have rated the Churchill War Rooms a 16?
Yep, 16 out of 30. It's not great, is it?
It's what it is. We'll compare this against other people's ratings of landmarks.
Oh, exciting.
At the end of this, we'll be able to see which landmark is the nation's favourite.
Wow. I'm looking forward to that, actually. Yeah. After we get through 500 podcasts.
Yeah, 500 podcasts, 500 landmarks. Dear listeners, strap yourselves in.